It is amazing the amount of deception that we put up with. All of us know that the food we see in advertisements looks nothing like the food that we purchase at McDonald's or Denny's or Subway. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still dig a Subway sandwich or a Denny's breakfast, but I've never seen a Subway tomato look as red as those falling tomatoes that we see in the commercials. And I've never had a Denny's breakfast that looks as good as the Grand Slam that we see advertised on those plastic sheets when you go to the restaurant. Advertising food exactly the way it looks, it isn't always appealing. I used to go to a restaurant in college called Tradewinds. And Tradewinds was a breakfast, lunch place, dinner place, and they had their food advertised right up on the wall when you walked in, and it was taken by pictures. I mean, they were old-looking pictures, but the pictures were of real food, not beautified, not made up, just a plate of food. And I have to say that some things I didn't order because it looked so unappetizing up on the wall. It looked kind of gray or dull. It didn't look as exciting as the food that is made up and taken pictures of by professional photographers. And yet the truth was that their breakfast was a whole tier above Denny's breakfast, even though the pictures looked better. The things they had to offer usually tasted a little better, even though the pictures were so much worse. There's a pressure to oversell everything these days, to oversell everything. Whatever it is that we're doing, to use words, to use images, to use things that make what we're doing seem bigger or better or more exciting or more promising or more important than it is. The same is true when it comes to faith. We rightly want people to know about Jesus. We rightly want people to come to our church. But in order to keep up with everything, we might feel the need to advertise our church as the biggest and best there is. We might feel the need to make big claims to get people in our doors. And in times like these, times where it seems the world is falling apart, it might seem tempting to say very big and promising and sure things in these moments, like we know exactly what's going on and have the answer to it all, when in fact we often don't. Or we simply might try to polish things up and hide the parts of Christianity that we aren't so excited about, or move away from those things. But today's gospel reading shows us another way outside of this trying to polish things up or make Jesus or church or anything seem bigger and better or more important. In the Gospel of John, we hear a story of Jesus' very first followers. After Jesus begins his ministry, he starts to gather people around him. He starts to invite people to come and learn from him, follow him, hear his teaching, watch what he's doing. And in this particular story, Jesus calls a man named Philip. Now, Philip gets excited about Jesus pretty quickly. He sees Jesus, he listens to him, he's excited, and he buys in really quickly because he sees something about Jesus. And so naturally, he wants to go tell people that he knows and loves. And he goes and he tells Nathanael, his friend. He finds Nathanael, and at first he does the big sell. He goes to Nathanael and says, "Hey, we found him, the one that Moses talked about, the one that the prophets talked about. And his name is Jesus. He's Joseph's son from Nazareth." Now, hearing this, Nathanael isn't initially impressed because he thinks nothing good can come from Nazareth. For Nathanael, the big claim doesn't seem to match reality. Nazareth wasn't a place known for producing kings or prophets or messiahs. It wasn't a place known for doing much good in the world. Maybe there are places like that we know. Maybe people have said that about the places that we've come from. I know that experience in going to college or moving to another town and explaining where I live to people or where I've come from. And most people have no idea where that is or no idea what place that might be, because they've only seen the map as the big important cities are the ones they've gone to. And so this is Jesus. Jesus came from a small town, lived his life in obscurity. And already here in this beginning story of Jesus, we're starting to see something about Jesus. And that there was never much on the surface to get people excited about Jesus. He wasn't a local legend. He didn't have some great claims to fame and power. He wasn't well known. He was just some dude that lived in a small town, Joseph's son from Nazareth. He showed up out of obscurity. And people like Nathanael rightly wondered, really? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Can anything worthwhile come from those places? At this point, Philip does something that I find wise. Instead of trying to argue with Nathanael or persuade him, he simply invites Nathanael to come and see. He doesn't use fancy language or makes lots of promises. Instead, he invites his friend to come and see for himself and then make up his own mind. I find Philip's approach to Nathanael refreshing because in our world, it seems that Jesus is used for almost anything. Big claims about Jesus are used to sell things or make a name for people. And Jesus is sold as the answer to all your problems or the key to your success or your financial well-being. Even in church, we can get a little carried away with the way we talk about faith and Jesus and promises and all those things sometimes. It's true that throughout the Bible and in our faith, there are big claims about Jesus. There are promises that often seem too good to be true. There are words of hope that make us want to believe. And yet I think that right now, in the time and place that we live, the smaller and subtler invitation of Philip, come and see, is one that we would do well to hear and practice. Because the bigger and bolder claims about Jesus, they have often been used to deceive people. They've been used to harm people. They've been used to cover up greed and a desire for power. They've been used to justify violence and hatred. They've been used to make people feel bad about questioning and doubting or anything like that. But instead of all of this, the invitation to come and see for yourself, it shows respect for people. And it allows people to make up their own minds. It allows people to use their senses. And even more, it shows that there really is something good and true in this person about Jesus that can speak for itself without us having to oversell it, without us having to make it seem more than it is. Come and see is an invitation for people to see for themselves. Now, these words can be scary because, one, what if people don't come? What if Nathanael, like many people actually in the stories of Jesus, just decided like, no, I'm kind of busy, I got other things to do? And what if people do come, but don't see anything worth sticking around for? This also happened in the story of Jesus, right? People came to Jesus, they were intrigued by him, but then his message seemed hard to them or difficult, or they wanted to keep on doing what they were doing. Now, I know this feeling of fear as a pastor or as someone who works in churches. If people looked into our churches and communities, if they looked into our lives and relationships, that which we call our faith, would they see anything that speaks for itself? Would they see anything worth sticking around for? Most of all, would they see any of the person that Philip was so excited about in the first place? Would they see any of this person who lived his life in humility? Would they see any of this person who welcomed outcasts and sinners? Would they see any of this man who healed those beaten down by life? Would they hear any of his words of grace or peace and calling? These questions turn Philip's invitation to Nathanael, they turn them back on us. Because if we hope and pray that there is something to be seen in our lives, then we, like Nathanael, need to come and see Jesus for ourselves. We need, again, to turn to the person that we read about in the Gospels. We need to come and see for ourselves who is this one who came out of Nazareth. What does he have to say? And is he worth sticking around for? In this moment, with so much going on in our world, with so much national turmoil, the threat of violence, with so much stress and tension, with the ongoing pandemic, and with everything else in our life, it might seem that there are more important things to say today. And maybe there are. But I'm not sure I have those things to say right now. I don't have any great plans for our world to get out of its mess. I don't have any magical words of comfort that will fix everything in your life. I can't even say that Jesus will fix all your problems or give you all the answers. But I can invite you to come and see. I can invite you to come and see the way of Jesus that I believe is a true way and a good way. I can invite you to come and hear his words again. Come and see the things that he does and the way he lives. I can give you the invitation that he gives to his followers. Come and follow me. Come and see. And then maybe we will see what Philip saw. And then maybe we will see what Nathanael saw. Because Nathanael does come to see. Nathanael does come and see this man from Nazareth, even though he thought not much good could come from Nazareth. He comes to see Jesus. And the amazing thing is that Jesus sees him first. Jesus is the one to make the initial contact with Nathanael. And he calls out to Nathanael, "Look, here comes someone in whom there is no deceit. Here comes an honest man." Nathanael's caught off guard, and he said, "How did you know this about me?" To which Jesus replied, "I saw you under the fig tree." Now, what did Jesus saw when he looked under the fig tree? What did he see Nathanael doing or not doing? We don't know, but Nathanael did. Nathanael heard this, and he believed. He believed, and he said, "Rabbi, you are God's son, you are Israel's king." To which Jesus replies, "You haven't seen anything yet." He then goes on to tell Nathanael, "You will see heaven opened. You will see angels ascending and descending on the Son of Man." This is what Nathanael got when he came and saw. Now here I am today, giving a nice and reserved call to come and see Jesus. Here I am trying not to oversell things in this sermon by what I say or do. But here is Jesus making the big sell, using these big words, these very spiritual words, to talk about some reality that Nathanael's going to see in him. Heaven opened, angels ascending and descending. Now, what does Jesus mean by this? We're not exactly sure because we don't read any instance in the gospel of exactly this happening. And yet we do know what Nathanael saw. When he followed Jesus, he saw Jesus heal people. He saw Jesus welcome the outcast. He heard Jesus' teaching to love God and love one's neighbor, to love one's enemy. He saw Jesus turn the other cheek. He saw Jesus give up his life on the cross. And in that moment, he saw something. He saw something that not many would have thought worth seeing, a life given in humility and grace. And yet there, Nathanael did see God. He did see the angels ascending and descending right there as Christ was on the cross. So today, along with Nathanael, along with everyone else, we are invited to come and see. And this simple call is not so simple in our world, because sometimes we don't know where to go. And sometimes we don't know what we're looking for. When we see Jesus plastered all over everywhere, we wonder which Jesus is the one that we're looking for. Is it that Jesus or that one? Is it that one that someone's talking about or that Jesus? Where do we go? What do we see? Today, the best place to begin is simply in the Gospels. The Jesus that Nathanael saw, the Jesus that Matthew, Mark, and Luke talked about, the Jesus that John proclaimed. But also we look in other areas. We look in the places that Jesus was, places where there was great suffering, places where there was great mercy. Jesus was never found among the violent. He was never found among the proud, but always among the humble and the weak. And there we see him too. So today, come and see.